Test, test, test. Okay. I think everyone should be able to hear me now. There we go. Looks like audio is good to go. So thank you everyone for joining me today. If you can hear me in chat, please let me know. Looked like we had a little bit of technical difficulties there for a second, but seems like everything's a-okay. Thank you again so much for joining me today. Sunday, May 15th, already 2022. Nice and early, 7:15 a.m. where I am. Again, let me know where you're listening from. Let me know what time it is where you are. Always love to hear it. Always love seeing you guys in chat and seeing your feedback. So, again, great to be on here. Have a really interesting topic for you guys today. And one that, has sort of gone overlooked. Perhaps it's, one of those things where too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And we've talked about that before on the live streams and a few of the videos. And I know some people really take quite a few supplements, especially those individuals. When we talk about, calcium, which is today's topic, a calcium supplement, well, that's going to be one of the more important supplements that we see out there. And the reason for that, and especially for older individuals, and the reason is a lot of older individuals and even people who are in their 50s, 60s are beginning to see the ramifications and just some of the symptoms of osteoporosis. And so what's one of the most important vitamins and minerals out there to improve overall bone health, bone mineral density, bone strength, something that can help to prevent fractures and things like that is going to be calcium. And so calcium supplementation is often recommended to these individuals, especially those dealing with osteoporosis. But what we're finding is there may be a correlation between having high calcium intake, and usually that's done through supplementation, and increasing the risk factors for coronary heart disease or cardiovascular disease. All right, we can name it, a number of different things: heart disease, cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease. You guys will hear me say that in a number of different ways. So let's talk a little bit about, should we be worried about how much calcium we're intaking? Should we be trying to get enough calcium in through foods, so foods that are high in calcium, which we can go through a list of, or should we be sticking to our supplements? I know some people who take up to 500 milligrams or 500 mgs of calcium per day. And, let's take a look at what the research says about that. Is that too much? Is that not enough? Is that the right one? I think looking at the research on this and some of the studies that are coming out, I think it's important that we at least know and address this issue. As always, I would always tell you guys, as if you've listened to any of these live streams or any of the discussions that we've done, the first thing you need to do is speak with your medical practitioner. Okay, speak with your medical practitioner. That way they can help come up with a plan. They can let you know exactly how much you should or should not be taking. Again, we can look at all the studies we want, but for each individual, it's going to go on a case-by-case basis. People always kind of not get upset, but sometimes they don't want to speak to their doctor about this. The reason why I say that is because they have a whole medical history for yourself, and every individual is different. So if you have, let's say, high cholesterol or high blood pressure or things that are going to put you at risk already, so some of the risk factors for heart disease, then again, the amount of calcium that you're going to be intaking, all right, and the amount that we have to focus on, how much calcium you should be having, is probably going to change from person to person, just based on your own medical history. All right, so that's why we need to make sure that we're speaking with our medical practitioners first, guys. But again, I'm going to come at this from what the studies say as a nutritionist, and just some of the things that's out there right now, the general information coming from peer-reviewed studies and a number of different studies. All right, these aren't just claims that I've kind of just grabbed off the internet. These are large double-blind studies that are actually, quite interesting when you read them. At least I found them to be an interesting read. You'll find these in many peer-reviewed journals. One of the more interesting ones, I'll just let you guys know, all right, if you are interested in reading some of this stuff, there's one called Calcium Supplements and the Risk of Cardiovascular Disease. Pretty easy to remember, all right? Calcium Supplements and the Risk of Cardiovascular Disease, a meta-analysis of clinical trials. That was put out in 2021, all right? So that's going to give you some of the more recent information on what calcium supplementation, right, can do and how it can affect our heart. And is it actually, going to put us at risk for, cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease and all of those different things. The nice one with that is, guys, is it breaks it down very, very easy. How much people took, what was the increase in cardiovascular disease, and the conclusions were very, 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 very easy to follow as well. So let's get right into it, guys. And again, if you can hear me, please say hi in chat. As I always say, it's always great to have the back and forth with you guys. So if you have any questions as well, we're talking about calcium supplementations and if they can increase the risk for heart disease and what the papers and what the research is saying. But again, go ahead, say hi. You can ask questions. This is the time to have them answered. And I know it's been a little minute since we've done our last stream, but I just want you guys to know that I'm going to be trying to get on here as often as possible. And thank you guys, as always, for the support. So, I told you about the one peer-reviewed journal article that came out in 2021. So what we're finding is, in these peer-reviewed analysis, all right, basically what we're finding is that in these double-blind studies, all right, we're finding that the conclusion is that calcium supplements can increase the risk of heart disease. And again, how much does it increase? Well, again, that's going to depend on a number of different factors. All right, how much you're taking, all right, if your medical history, if you have, other symptoms or other risk factors for heart disease, such as high cholesterol, such as high blood pressure, like we talked about before. Obesity is a big one as well. So those are definitely the things that we want to make sure that we're looking after. All right. Now, the other important thing that these, again, double-blind studies are finding when it comes to calcium supplementation is that not only is it increasing the risk of heart disease, but I want those individuals that are listening right now, we need to be especially not concerned, but mindful of individuals, all right, so the women who are listening, in healthy postmenopausal women. All right, so we're finding that calcium supplements are increasing the risk of heart disease, all right, particularly, so even more so in healthy postmenopausal women, all right. So that's what the new information is saying. So for those individuals, postmenopausal women, again, you're going to want to speak with your medical practitioner. Very, very important that you do. Mahona, thank you so much. Good to see you in chat. Thank you. Appreciate you being in here. Thank you so much for being here again, and thank you so much for your comment. Again, let me know where you're listening from, guys. Always great to hear, and thank you so much for the thumbs up. So that's where we're going to start with it, guys. We know that in some of these studies, all right, before, right, and it's not always the best. You have to look out for the studies. Is it a good study? Double-blind studies generally good for this. They are finding that, yes, calcium supplements can increase the risk of heart disease, okay? Now, again, as I mentioned at the top of the discussion, the reason why, I think that this is a huge piece of news is, one, we know that heart disease is increasing significantly around the world already. And that's for a number of different reasons. Ones I've already said before, atherosclerosis, our general diet, lack of exercise or movement, obesity, tacked on to all those other different things when it comes to our, LDL cholesterol levels and blood pressure levels, all of those different things, triglycerides, right? But not only that, but now we're starting to see a correlation, guys. We know that heart disease is really off the rails right now. It's just increasing year after year all over the world. I've given you guys the numbers before in some of our heart disease discussions, right? Now, at least 25% of the world's population is going to deal with some sort of risk factor of heart disease. And by 2030, right, that statistic is estimated to go up to 33%. So 1/3 of individuals worldwide. Doesn't matter where you are. A lot of people will think, Western world, United States, Canada. This is everywhere. I gave you guys the new European statistics when it came to heart disease and how much that has gone up, especially with obesity and everything like that. India, that's awesome. Mahonath, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you so much. Great to have you listening from India. But again, with calcium, the important thing is, speak with your medical practitioner. That's going to give you the best understanding, all right? Because we're going to talk about what some of the intake levels were in these studies, and maybe, how much we want to try to be getting into, what could put us at risk. But we know that calcium is needed by the body for a number of different health reasons as well. Okay, so it's not like we're saying, you have to eat zero calcium. All right, one general good idea, all right, and before we get into this, right, the heart disease, going back to the heart disease increase, not only is heart disease increasing, but osteoporosis is also increasing, especially as we have an aging population. So you're kind of getting a double whammy here, so to speak, because not only do we see symptoms of heart disease increasing, numerous different ones, but also osteoporosis. So that's where you're starting to get the increase in calcium and calcium supplementation, because as everyone knows, or probably everyone most likely has heard, the calcium is very, very important for your bones, all right, for overall bone health, all right. So for healthy bone function, all right, basically, calcium, just like vitamin D, necessary for our bones to be healthy. And usually you'll see actually a calcium and vitamin D supplementation, because remember we talked about a little bit before in supplements that vitamin D actually helps with the absorption of calcium. And what has been the most important, or at least popular, vitamin over the last few years, well, it's been vitamin D with vitamin K2. So we're seeing that more and more calcium is being absorbed right now. So kind of an interesting time when it comes to calcium supplementation, guys, and heart disease. So I just wanted to point that out. Not only is heart disease on the rise in general, but also osteoporosis. And when that happens, all right, because that is happening, calcium supplementation is also on the rise. Right? A lot of people are now taking calcium, all right, maybe mixed in with magnesium or vitamin D, and, getting quite a bit of calcium in their diet, with just supplementation, not just with healthy foods. I think just trying to get it in with healthy foods, we'll talk about some of the food sources when it comes to calcium, I think is a very nice way of doing it, making sure that you're not going too high on your calcium levels. Remember, we said too much of a good thing can be a bad thing as well, right? But we know with calcium, we just need to be careful that we're not overdoing it, because we do need calcium, guys. Remember, calcium helps to build and maintain strong bones, right? It's going to help prevent bone-related ailments such as osteoporosis, right? The other important thing is your heart, when you're eating it or taking it in at moderate levels, at healthy levels, actually is going to help strengthen the heart, muscles, and nerves, all right? And help all of those different, organs. So our hearts, our heart, our muscles, our other bodily organs, all right, function properly. Okay. Now there's some that are showing that it can help protect against cancer. Again, I don't go too much into the cancer discussion, but combining it with vitamin D, calcium and vitamin D, some studies are starting to show that it can be cancer preventing as well. All right, so some calcium, again, we're not saying that taking calcium in and of itself it's bad. We're saying that if you have, heart disease history, or you have, or you're taking too much calcium, that can be a risk for some heart complications for you. Now let's take a look at what some of the studies are finding here, guys. Okay, remember we said that for those individuals, all right, and I think this is really, really important to show in the meta-analysis that were being conducted. They found that calcium supplements increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, all right, fairly significant for most healthy individuals, but also for healthy postmenopausal women, guys, okay? So those are the people who seem to be most at risk, all right? I think it was about a 15% increase for those individuals, which is fairly significant, guys. All right, so that's why we really want to make sure that we're not overdoing it on the calcium. So the next general question should be, well, how much calcium is too much calcium? Well, in this study, what they did was they gave the group that was taking the calcium supplementation, which saw an increase, I think it was a rise of about 30%, overall, which is, again, very significant, guys, as opposed to the other group that was taking, just a placebo. All right, they were taking 700 to 1,000 milligrams, all right, per day of supplementary calcium. All right. We saw that when they were getting 1,000 mgs per day, guys, again, it significantly increased the risk of cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease. All right, so very important that we understand that. The 1,000 is usually, all right, what is recommended daily, anywhere from 750 to 1,000. All right, so we have 750 mgs to 1,000. I'll just type in chat. That's usually going to be your recommended. If you're supplementing already with 1,000, you're not taking into consideration all of the foods, all right, or all of the foods that you're eating and all of the calcium that you're getting in those foods. All right, things, if you eat dairy, you're already getting in a ton of calcium in your diet. All right, also, if you eat, dark leafy green vegetables, again, you're going to be getting a ton of calcium in your diet. Things like broccoli and kale, very, very good. Even collard greens, very good source of calcium. All right, again, like I said, dairy is off the charts, of course. If you drink milk, if you eat yogurt, which a lot of people do, right? Again, even your almond milk and things like that can have a nice amount of calcium, sometimes up to just 1 cup, having almost half of your recommended daily intake of calcium. So close to anywhere from 300 to 500 mgs of calcium in there. Again, you start having your dark leafy green vegetables, your seeds, your nuts, chia seeds, almond seeds. You're getting a tremendous amount of calcium right there. All right. Do you need calcium supplementation? Again, that's the question you're going to want to ask your doctor, depending on what your diet looks like. If you're eating those types of foods, guys, you're getting a ton of calcium in your diet already. So if you're taking 500 to 1,000 mgs of calcium supplementation on top of all of that, that's what these recent studies, a randomized, a meta-analysis of randomized, double-blind studies, placebo-controlled studies, all a bunch of different studies are finding this exact same thing. That amount of calcium can increase your risk for heart disease, things like heart attacks as well. So very, very interesting, and it makes sense why this could be happening. Again, now that we know, how much we saw in these studies, usually it was somewhere between 750 or 700, and 1,000 mgs of calcium supplementation that was being given or taken, right? That was leading to an increase in cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease, and increasing your risk of heart attacks, right? Again, up to about 30% increased risk in postmenopausal women they saw about a 15% increase, right? Just by taking that amount of calcium in supplementation form. So the next question I guess we should ask is why? Why would calcium, or calcium supplementation increase the risk of heart disease? Well, we know that the connection between calcium and cardiovascular disease, is quite plausible when we look at, things like plaque buildup in the arteries. We know calcium deposits are a part of that artery clogging plaque, which is very important to take into consideration and remember when we are taking this supplement. So calcium deposits are part of artery clogging plaque. Again, when this happens, it's very detrimental to the overall health of our arteries. It's going to lead to stiffening of the arteries, the hardening of our arteries, blood vessels, everything like that. It's going to increase your risk of atherosclerosis, again, which is a major risk factor for not only heart disease, but also heart attack, for stroke. Okay, so we can see some of the correlation and connection between calcium and cardiovascular disease. It starts to make more sense now. If we're having a stiffening of the arteries, of course that's going to increase the risk. If we're seeing more calcium deposits, and more calcium is being put into the body, that's going to lead and have a good possibility of leading to artery clogging plaque. So there you go for your heart attacks, things of that nature. So again, it makes a lot of sense when we look at, how can calcium supplementation increase the risk for heart disease? Well, those are two big ones right there. There's actually a test that people get, and it looks at how much calcium is in the body when individuals are actually getting, heart tests done and things like that, looking at their overall heart health. One would be a calcium test. But, again, these were individuals supplementing in between 700 and 1,000 mgs of calcium, guys. That's quite a bit. I will tell you. Most people I know, and most people I work with are taking, let's say that they have osteoporosis, they're taking around 250 to about 500 mgs per day. Each person is different in how much calcium they're going to need. Again, it depends on your medical history. It depends on your height and weight. It depends on your activity level. It depends if you've had a history of heart-related issues. All right, let me just see this question here. In which form is most easily absorbable? Where and what foods is it found? Okay, very good question. Well, we can definitely go to that because, it kind of builds and ties into my next point. But when it comes to absorption, you're always going to want for the best absorption, vitamin D is necessary, guys, for calcium to be absorbed in the intestine. Okay. We also know that, if you want to increase or improve absorption of calcium, magnesium is also very important, because magnesium allows for the proper, regulation and use and absorption of calcium and vitamin D by our body. Magnesium, of course, as you guys have known, we've talked about the hundreds of bodily functions that it can help to improve and bodily processes that it's involved in. So if we want to help, with the absorption of calcium, vitamin D is necessary. We have to make sure that we're getting in vitamin D. And again, you can do that through supplementation form, which we've talked about. We've had whole streams dedicated to vitamin D supplementation. Or you can eat fatty fish. We've talked about salmon, sardines, things like that. Eggs can help to some degree, but just making sure that you're getting in vitamin D. All right, so that's gonna help you with the absorption. All right, vitamin D is gonna make anything more easily absorbable. The other ones that are easily absorbable, all right, is gonna be any dairy. All right, like say for instance milk, obviously. All right, very much more easily absorbed than calcium from, let's say, almonds. All right, which are a little bit harder to break down. The nutrient uptake isn't quite as high than it is as in milk, just because of course it's liquid form, so a little bit easier for absorbing. But if you're having anything like milk, yogurt, even I'd say your dark leafy green vegetables, guys, even okra is another good one. Okra is well absorbed by the body. I think you're doing a great job of getting calcium in. All right, any dairy, if you don't eat dairy, then dark leafy green vegetables are your next best bet. Let's say if you're on a vegan or vegetarian diet, all right, dark leafy green vegetables, and then we can go with seeds and almonds. All right, and nuts. Sorry, walnuts are okay. Almonds are your best. Chia seeds are your best. Even sesame seeds. All right, so those are some of the foods there. Sitting in the sun for vitamin D, absolutely. Most easily absorbable, if we want to talk about most easily absorbable, then all we have to do is just say getting natural sunlight. Okay, if we're not talking about the foods, if we're actually, the best way of getting vitamin D and the easiest way of getting vitamin D is sitting in the sun. Absolutely, natural sunlight is always going to be the best way to get vitamin D naturally. I think I was reading a certain study, and I think, all it takes is 15 to 20 minutes, and you're already getting, enough vitamin D, your daily recommended value. If you're sitting out there for 30 to 45 minutes, then you're certainly very close. But yeah, sitting in the sun, Mahona, yes. Very, very good for vitamin D. Okay, so I just want to make sure that it's clear. So, individuals were taking, in supplementation form, 700 to 1,000 mgs. Of course, we got to look at everything else that they're eating. That could be double, even more than double, if they're eating those types of high calcium foods. All right, and especially if they're eating foods that are good with vitamin D, or they're in the sun a lot, then you're getting more of that calcium absorbed in the body. Now, the other important thing, guys, is, how much should you be taking a day? Of course, again, we always say speak with your medical practitioner, because they're going to have your whole history, medical history, right? Your dietary intake needs, your health history. Like I said, if you are dealing with heart health issues, you want to speak with your medical practitioner first. But, what are some of the guidelines that are out there? Well, we see, a lot of the times about 400 to 500 milligrams per day. So mgs. You'll hear me say mgs or milligrams sometimes as well, right? Like I think the WHO, World Health Organization, said about 400 to 500 milligrams of calcium is needed per day to prevent bone health related issues such as osteoporosis. Okay. So again, that's much lower, all right? 400 to 500 milligrams of calcium per day. That's a lot lower, all right, because that's taking into consideration supplements, natural food, doesn't matter, just 400 to 500 milligrams. Some people are just supplementing with 500. A lot of people with osteoporosis or bone health related issues are supplementing with even more than 500. Right? They're supplementing usually with about 750 to 1,000 milligrams. All right, again, which is putting you at risk for heart disease, as I mentioned in multiple studies. All right, the best one that I found out there was one that had numerous studies, guys. Again, these aren't just handpicked, but numerous studies. All right, if we were to look at, I think it looked at almost something like 26, where it came off these conclusions of maybe even more than 26. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it looked at a number of different studies, and found that this increase, especially in postmenopausal women, all right, calcium supplementation can certainly increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Damon, good to see you in here. Positive vibes to you. Hope everything is good in Southern California. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Damon. I appreciate it. Now, the other important thing is, too, why you need to speak with your medical practitioner. Well, the WHO says about 400 to 500, where, remember I said, for most Americans, most areas in the world, they're going to, you're going to be recommended somewhere between 750 to 1,000. 1,000 is usually the highest you'll see the recommendation go. Sometimes I've seen 1,200. Which is awfully high, and it's usually for those individuals with late onset or, just who've been dealing with osteoporosis for a long time. That's usually the highest I've seen. I haven't seen any higher than that, to be honest with you. But it's usually about, the most is 1,000. But we see for the supplementation, anywhere between the 700 and 1,000 range, all right, we were seeing increases in cardiovascular disease, guys. So just be careful of how much you are intaking. A lot of the times, if you're eating healthy, all right, and you consume dairy, that you're going to be getting enough calcium quite easily in your diet. Especially, like I said, if you have things like, the reason why I say if you eat healthy, because remember, healthy nuts and seeds are going to give you good calcium as well. This is why I love things like almonds, all right, like a superfood, walnuts, sesame seeds, poppy seeds might even be high, I think. I definitely know that chia seeds are. And there's a lot of people out there who consume chia seeds. But even if you have things like oatmeal, it's going to have a little bit of calcium in it as well, right? But dark leafy green vegetables, things like that, broccoli, kale, spinach, okra, collard greens, super high in calcium. If you're just eating that and not even dairy alone, if you throw milk and almond milk and, for our vegan and vegetarian friends as well, yogurt, all of that different stuff, tofu, you're going to be getting tons and tons of calcium in the diet. Does a glass of milk? Well, that's a great question, Mohana. How much of it is absorbed is going to be, dependent from person to person. It's like asking how much protein. Plus, you got to look at the quality. What type of milk, what percentage. Is it 1% milk, skim milk, 2% milk? But it's the same thing as protein. Not all proteins have the exact same bioavailability. All right, so if you looked at things like eggs, all right, which have one of the highest, if not the highest, I think the only one that's higher is like a whey protein supplement, all right, or collagen or something along those lines, all right, compared to something like a rotisserie chicken, all right, then it's going to be a little bit lower. But it's very, very easy to find. If we just look up, milk and nutrition, we can very, very easily find how much is going to be in a glass. And usually a glass is considered to be about 250 milliliters, all right? So let's put a cup. So cup, it says 244, so close. So one glass of milk, and again, that's going to be 1%, right, is going to be 30% of your daily recommended value of calcium. So there we go right there. That's only 244 milliliters. That's only one cup, guys. One cup. That's not a lot when it comes to drinking, if you're drinking milk or anything like that, all right? 1% milk. If it's 2% milk, it's 29%. That's why I'm saying it doesn't really matter what it is. 3.7%, it's still going to be 29%. So if you're having a glass of milk, or at least the equivalent to, you might not be drinking that, but if you're adding it to things, if it's getting in here, getting in there, you're getting a third of your daily recommended value of calcium already. All right, so it's very, very high in calcium. It's not that hard to get your calcium intake if you're eating healthy, and if you're having dairy products like milk. I take 100 supplements, but no calcium. All right, wow, 100 supplements, Joseph. That's quite a bit, my friend. No calcium. Yeah, calcium. Calcium is one that's really grown in popularity over the last few years, I'll say. And one of the major reasons, which I've mentioned before, is because of the amount of individuals who are dealing with bone health issues, such as osteoporosis. And again, the one thing that we're finding with, calcium supplementation having an impact, some correlation we've seen with multiple studies, double blind, as I mentioned before, meta-analysis, so it included a bunch of different studies. We did see the conclusion of these studies was that calcium supplements increase the risk of heart disease when you're eating it or consuming it at a level of 700 to 1,000 milligrams, and a big increase in cardiovascular disease, or at least a significant increase in cardiovascular disease for postmenopausal women. Okay. So we have to ask, what are some other... Exactly. Yep, Joseph, we went over some of the reasons. So, we talked about, calcium deposits, all right, being found, all right, especially causing artery clogging plaque. So calcification of the arteries. We talked a little bit about that. We talked about the stiffening of the arteries, the hardening of the arteries, the increased risk of atherosclerosis. All right, all this is going to interfere with, the action of our heart, all right, circulation, all right. If you want to call them valves and things like that, then, we need to be careful. But yes, calcification of the arteries, absolutely. Same with increasing fatty deposits, all right. Plaque, things of that nature. Does cottage cheese have high calcium? Yes, it does, absolutely. Calcium, cottage cheese, a great source of calcium. So is Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is another good one. I'm a big fan of both. Again, that's going to help a lot of people meet their macronutrient needs. A lot of people are low in protein. So, cottage cheese, things like cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, which, is fairly low in fat, fairly low in carbohydrates, but high in protein, helps add a little bit more of that protein in there. Is butter. Butter is not a great source. That's a great question. Butter is not a great source of calcium. I think 1 tablespoon doesn't even have any calcium in it whatsoever, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, if you're eating any more than 1 tablespoon, you just got to make sure you're not taking too much butter. A lot of people will run from butter altogether, but, a lot of the individuals who, we want to keep saturated fats low, and 1 tablespoon has about 7 grams of saturated fat, which is, getting close to about half of your daily recommended intake of saturated fat. So I would not opt, I'm not saying that you have to take butter out entirely, but I would not opt for butter for your calcium intake, that's for sure. I would go more for like your 1%, 2%, 3.25% milk, your cottage cheese, your yogurt, Greek yogurt, non-sugar added yogurt, things like that. All right, so if you're just getting into chat, here's what we can sum up. If you're just getting into the live stream right now, we'll just sum up exactly what we've talked about so far, guys. We're asking the question, can calcium supplementation increase the risk for heart disease? What we've seen in numerous studies, we just had a major meta-analysis. So what that just means is it looks at a number of different studies that have been, taken over the last few years. The last major meta-analysis that I found, and there's probably one that came out this year as well in 2022, but in 2021, all right, a major meta-analysis just called, very, very simple, if you want to look it up yourself, Calcium Supplements and the Risk of Cardiovascular Disease, a meta-analysis of clinical trials. We saw that, yes, taking dietary calcium, all right, intake, supplementing calcium at 1,000 milligrams per day is going to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease. That was found in the studies, guys. Right? Also, an potential increase in heart attacks as well. And again, one major risk group I would say out there that I found in these studies was an increase in cardiovascular disease in postmenopausal women. So again, very, very important information there. And again, why does that happen? I think it's important to know. Okay, well, because we don't want to take calcium out of our diets altogether, right? But if we're supplementing at 1,000 milligrams and we're, eating well and above of 1,000 milligrams per day, just naturally, all right, why is that going to increase our risk for heart disease? Well, again, as we talked about, calcium deposits are a part of artery clogging plaque, all right? So it could contribute to more plaque being created in the body, all right, especially the arteries, obviously. All right, can also lead to stiffening and hardening of our arteries, all right, atherosclerosis, which again is going to interfere, all right, and negatively affect how the action of the heart, circulation, and everything like that. So we just need to make sure that that we're aware of the effects that taking too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, guys. This is what we're starting to see in the literature. So thank you so much for the questions, guys. I really appreciate that. What fruits have calcium? That's a really good question. There's not a ton. If you're gonna go for foods with calcium, usually your best bet is going to be like a dairy, like vegetables, like healthy fat sources, like even avocados, but nuts, seeds, things of that nature, rather than fruits. Lemons might have a little bit, if I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But yeah, for calcium, it's going to be more so those types of foods. But great question. Banana a little bit. Banana I was going to say, but it's, it's not the best source of calcium out there. Like 100 grams, let's say a medium banana has 0 calcium in it, guys. All right. So, like I said, when it comes to fruits and things of that nature, I would try to, if you're trying to get calcium in, fruits aren't going to be your best bet. It's going to be the dairy, the fish. Sorry, I was just adjusting the picture there, guys. It's going to be dairy. It's going to be vegetables. It's going to be your sardines, salmon, things like that, and of course your nuts and seeds. So again, make sure you speak with your medical practitioner. I just want to keep hammering that home because we need to make sure that you know your medical history. Again, it's hard for me to say how much exactly you should be taking. What I'm just going over is what the studies are finding, what the literature is finding. Literature is finding, as I said, 700 to 1,000 milligrams of calcium supplementation is causing an increase in cardiovascular disease. The normal daily average or recommended daily intake from the WHO is 400 to 500 milligrams. So obviously if you're taking 1,000, that's well over half, all right? If you're at the 400, if you're at 500, that's half, all right? But usually you'll see about 1,000 milligrams at the very top of what's recommended for, like, let's say the in the United States. 1,000 is going to be the top. Even this is all to prevent osteoporosis. All right, the average person, to prevent osteoporosis, to have healthy bones, the WHO says 500 milligrams. Sometimes you'll see 1,000 milligrams in certain areas of the world, but that's for the average person and to have healthy bones. So it's not like we need to go much over from what these studies are showing us already. That's why I really like these studies, because they went from 700 to 1,000 milligrams, well, that's on average what's going to be recommended, the daily recommended intake of calcium in most areas of the world. So it really correlates well. All right, and we know, like I said, a significant increase. We see through peer-reviewed double-blind studies concluding that calcium supplementation can increase the risk of heart disease. And in some cases, with like postmenopausal women, 15% increase, all right, and things like that, right? Again, can increase overall heart attack risk, all right? We already know that you're going to be getting good calcium if you're having dairy products and leafy green vegetables, right? If you're eating those types of foods, I think the best thing that you can do for yourself, if you're eating those types of foods, dairy, dark leafy green vegetables, you're having a good intake of nuts and seeds, so healthy fat sources, guys. I think if you're doing that, then you're doing a good job of getting calcium from natural foods. Right? A lot of the times you won't even need supplementation, and that's even if you're dealing with osteoporosis a lot of the times. And why is that? Because, as I've already mentioned, 500 milligrams, the World Health Organization is saying that that's enough to help prevent osteoporosis. Up to 1,000 in places like the United States, that's already enough, more than enough. That's the high level. That's going to be enough to prevent osteoporosis. So anything more than that is really just, again, too much of a good thing. At least that's what we're seeing from the studies, guys. Apart from vitamin D and magnesium, what are the other factors necessary for better absorption of calcium? Fiber is going to be a good one. Probiotics are going to be a good one. Mahona. All right, excellent question. All right, so you're going to want to make sure that you're having good fiber. The reason for that is we just want to make sure that we have good gut health. So our digestive system is working and functioning properly. If it is, all right, then that's going to help increase nutrient uptake, dietary nutrient uptake. So increase calcium absorption. Probiotics are also good. We want good gut flora, good healthy gut bacteria. If we have a good healthy gut bacteria, of course, that's going to help with the absorption as well. All right. So vitamin D, yes. Magnesium is another important one. Another good one is actually going to be vitamin C. All right. Vitamin C helps with the absorption of a lot of different nutrients, vitamins, minerals. Doesn't really matter what it is. All right. But like things like iron. All right, things like that. The other important one too, guys, and we see this with the increase and the rise over the last couple of years. We already talked a little bit about vitamin D, but vitamin K is going up. All right, and vitamin K is necessary for healthy bones. Remember, K1 is going to come from your dark leafy green vegetables. K2, organ meats, more commonly though, fermented foods. Exercise, yes, if we're talking exercise, it can have an effect on the absorption of calcium. Well, it's going to be negligible. But the nice thing with exercise, and it's important that you bring that up, because a lot of the times when calcium supplementation is usually correlates with someone who's dealing with bone health related issues, bone health ailments, osteoporosis, most common. All right, exercise is going to be great for that. I think a good point that we can mention here is, now that we're starting to have these studies that are coming out and finding that too much calcium supplementation or too much calcium intake, again, not all calcium supplements are bad, all right? If we need to fill in the holes, then of course we want to do that with supplementation at safe levels, at healthy levels that aren't going to increase our risk of heart disease, all right, whether that's through supplementation or through natural food. But we can do other things to treat bone-related ailments, osteoporosis. One of them being exercise, like Mahona just mentioned. It can be exercise in a number of different ways. It can be walking, it can be swimming, biking, hiking, going to a gym, and not even going to a gym, but just doing some form of resistance training. That's great for our bones. That's why I love swimming. It's low impact and you get some resistance as well. It's aerobic and anaerobic. So exercise can definitely help. So now that these studies are coming out, a lot of medical practitioners are starting to look at treatment in osteoporosis and bone health related ailments in different ways. You're having to take the full picture into consideration. Before it was just, okay, increase calcium. All right, we know calcium is good for the bones. Let's just, increase calcium, start taking a calcium supplement. All right, now again, we're starting to see a little bit of a switch, right? And seeing, yeah, okay, calcium is good. If you don't get enough, of course, that's not going to be good for our bones. Our bones need calcium, all right? But our bones also need vitamin D. They also need magnesium, all right? Phosphorus is very important, all right? Things like zinc, vitamin K, even vitamin B12, guys. We see in some studies where vitamin B12 can influence bone building cells, all right? So bone building cells is very, very important. It can help to maintain strong bones. So it's not just a matter now where if we are dealing with these issues, we have to increase calcium or eat calcium at a super high rate. We can have these other nutrients, these other things that we can do, exercise being one of them, lifestyle changes as well. All right, and then again, apart from that, I would also say cutting out sugar. All right, sugar is major detrimental to bone health, to all health in general. You guys know my feelings on sugar. Absolutely no nutritional benefit whatsoever, and you're actually taking steps back when it comes to your overall health. Same thing with sodium, right? And the same thing with alcohol. So I hope we kind of clarified that. I know we touched on a number of different things. We've touched on calcium. That's our question for the day. Can calcium supplements increase the risk for heart disease, your risk for heart disease? Well, yes, it can if we're eating or consuming too much, either through natural foods. I think if you're having it through natural foods, I think that's a good way of making sure that it's not too high, because you can just take one, supplement, say if it's pill form, one supplement might have 250, some have as much as 500. That's a lot, all right? That's going to be quite a bit of calcium all at once. Very, very easy to intake. But if you're getting it from natural foods, all right, that's going to help keep you in the ballpark, keep you in the range of a healthy level of calcium. So we know that, yes, if we're taking too much calcium, these studies have shown, right, if once you start getting into that 1,000 milligrams of supplementation on top of everything else that you're eating, yes, it can increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and the potential to increase the risk of heart attacks. All right, but make sure do other things, guys. A lot of people will think weight bearing just means lifting weights, but walking, swimming, other things like that is going to be great for your bones as well. Getting good sun. All right, vitamin D, we talked about how important that is. Making sure you get your vitamin K. That's also going to be important for your bones. Iso sugar. Sorry, Mohana, just missing that. Iso sugar. So for me, sugar is kind of like a no-no. we don't want sugar. So sorry, I'm not quite sure ISO sugar is, but for sugar in general, I would try to stay away as much as possible. Sorry, just having a sip of coffee here. If there's any other questions, guys, please feel free to ask. I know, like I said, when we started this, instead of sugar, okay, so instead of sugar, I mean, you can have natural sweeteners. Monk fruit was a popular one that some people have mentioned. Stevia is a nice one. A lot of people will go for things like honey, raw organic honey. You just have to make sure that you're still having that in moderation. Jaggery instead of sugar. I believe that's a cane sugar, if I'm not mistaken. I know that's really popular in India, isn't it, Mohana? Where I am, we don't have that quite a bit, but I believe that's a form of cane sugar. Might have to help me out with that one just a little bit. Maybe made with dates, something along those lines. It's coming back to me a little bit, but I don't know a ton about about that. Like I said, I know it's popular in Southeast Asia, in India, and everything like that. I think just having it in moderation then is probably best, Mohana. If it's natural, it might be made from like sap, if I'm not mistaken, so more on the natural side. If it is, yes, from cane sugar. Okay. All right, I'm not doing too bad. See, I'm in Canada, so we don't have all those different sugar substitutes and things here. You'll see Splenda and stevia, monk fruit. We don't even have another kind from dates. Okay, so there we go. I'm not doing too bad. All right, so again, that's going to be more on the natural side. If you are having and yes, from sap. Okay, great. So if you are going to have that, then Mohana, then I would say keep it in moderation. Will that be better than just your regular plain sugar table? Your white sugar? Yes. There's no nutrition in that. But if you're having it from like dates, sap, cane, the dates will give you a little bit of nutrition in and of itself. I think if you're keeping it in moderation, you're not spiking glucose and insulin too much, all right, I think you're doing just fine. Thank you for the question. That's great. I'm glad. I'd heard of it, but I don't even think I've done a video on that. So very interesting question. I'm glad that you brought it up. Like I said, and thank you so much for all the thumbs up, guys. I really appreciate it. And we're gonna start doing more and more of these live streams. I know it's been a minute since we've done them before. People will start to come back in as we start to make this more of a regular thing. We'll start to get more and more people back in here. I just want to say how much I appreciate everyone who has come in here. Mohana, Damon, Joseph, thank you so much, guys. For everyone else who came in and was listening, thank you so much. But big shout out to you three for contributing and asking your questions. Love hearing where you guys are from, as always. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support as well. I really do appreciate it. But, I think that's some important information when it comes to calcium supplementation. A lot of the times, I'll be doing consultations and, people will be taking, copious amounts of supplements when their diet is already looking good, or maybe supplements for things where they're already getting a lot of that, vitamin or mineral. So, calcium, I thought it would be an interesting topic just because of the latest data that's coming out, these recent studies that are coming out. We already know heart disease is on the rise all over the world, all right? We already know that osteoporosis is going up and up, especially in older populations. So the two are kind of, butting heads right now. And we're seeing that, yes, too much calcium can increase. It has the potential to increase your risk for heart disease. Okay, we talked about the numerous reasons why that could be, all right? And the range, 700 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of supplementation on top of everything else. Again, guys, 500 milligrams is usually what's recommended by the World Health Organization. You don't usually see much over 1,000. So if you're supplementing with 1,000, you're getting a lot of calcium in your day, especially if you're eating healthy. So just keep that in mind. So we will be back for more live streams. Thank you so much for joining me again today, guys. Really appreciated it. Time really flew. Time definitely flew. We're on here for an hour. So thank you so much. I think our next one will be, at the latest sometime next weekend, all right? But we'll definitely make sure that we get another one in here. I'd like to get bi-weekly ones, so do them twice a week. But if we can start out by doing one weekly one, so one once a week, that would be great. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. I hope that helped you better understand a little bit about the relationship between calcium supplementation, and the risk of heart disease. So thank you so much, guys. Appreciate having you all here.